Let's talk about something important.
Are they all here?
All but one.
Well, I'm going anyway.
Let's talk about something important. Put that coffee down.
Always
B.
Closing.
Always be closing. ABC. ABC, Alex. Wing It Podcast. GooseDigital.com. Who do we have?
Chris O'Neill.
Robin Kroll.
Kevin Butler.
Michael Turksani. Okay. It's all about sales, Chris.
Finally.
After 21 to 23, depending on the special editions, 25 episodes, Chris finally
got through. Finally got through to Mike.
Yeah.
Is this our first episode in the new office, technically?
Yes.
Second.
Yeah.
Second.
Oh,
Second.
podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, we are in the new office. We look different. Actually, we changed the lighting for this episode. Changed the mics up.
It's all new.
The walls are different.
Yeah.
The walls are a little
Same
bit different.
plant.
So
Can't survive the move though.
Yeah. So we're here. Actually, Alex, you could cut a few slides in even of the new office when you do this. A couple of shots.
Good idea. Transition.
But let's get down to business, okay? Because we're here to talk about sales.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing matters more than getting them to sign on the dotted line.
Nothing happens until the sale is made.
That's right.
It's one of those things, when done right, it's easy, but very hard to do right.
And if you do it wrong, it hurts a lot for a long time.
Yeah. True. The ups and downs. So we're in some deals, but our services are tied into the just bigger picture sales process, obviously, right? Especially when we're running lead generation programs or we're part of renewal processes on the tail end of a marketing automation implementation. It's at the end of the day, we're looking at new revenue. I mean, we're not a company. I don't think we've got any clients that fall into the pure branding realm and where we're just part of some large established brand that can kind of afford to just do things all day long.
Like everything we do for our clients has a conversion of sorts.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are directly in the middle of a sales process, whether that's at the front or in the middle, supporting in the end. So we thought, we should be talking a little bit more about that in a little bit of a tangent to the typical digital marketing automation topics that we would go through. And just sort of recognize, I think first and foremost, that digital teams that are being put together, I mean, they are ultimately about sales. I mean, it is at the end of the day all about sales. And even if you say you've got a test and learn framework, Robin, I mean, at the end, you need to get to a point where you can tie back those, close the loop, tie back, understand revenue, and see how your programs are working, right?
Well, that's what you're testing and learning, right? Is really how to, to drive that sales conversion, and to drive the right sales conversion. Just looking at Chris to his point, because, just having a bunch of unqualified leads, that's not going to really fuel up your sales funnel. And then closing leads that are ultimately not going to help you grow your business, that's not going to help either.
I think that's priority one is sales, get revenue, grow. But I think a secondary priority is understanding what was successful in that journey to getting the sales, so that one, you can double down, do it again. B, possibly learn to do things better. And I think sometimes that's understated, but that's certainly a key of the methodologies we try to roll in for our clients. And we don't hear that talked about enough, I think. But that's equally important. And sometimes you get things right, but still don't get the deal. But there's learnings there too.
Yeah. I think the thing that's become really evident over the course of the last maybe 5 or 10 years is how important it is to identify the ideal customer, the customer that is going to benefit most from the services that you have. And then once you have that, once you know what that is, and you can drive those conversations to the right people, then you've got something to really work with. But for many, many years, and we've talked about this before, sales and marketing had sort of like two different rooms. They operated completely separately.
Different
They had
objectives, yeah.
different objectives, different line items on the spreadsheet. They had completely no interaction. Now, how important is it now? These go-to-market plans that we have, it's absolutely, vital that we are singing off the same sheet, because, if I'm in conversation with somebody who has been qualified by the marketing group, then I know that it may not come to fruition, but at least we're talking to the right
Organization, the right people, likely, yeah.
Right.
But we don't even really have teams. We're like team revenue. And then we have roles and specialties and expertise within. But we don't talk about it like, hey, Chris, the sales team needs to do this because the marketing team said so.
No, you're right about that. So yeah, I guess I'm talking.
Individuals
But
are
I think in
teams
terms
here.
of alignment, like I think what you're saying is just that. I mean, that's where we look at like all about sales. I think that is probably a good thing to instill into your digital team thinking. I think where you were going in terms of it does take time, and you have to be able to test and learn these things, and it's probably unrealistic for an executive team that's rolling out a lead generation strategy to develop sales to say, well, that it's been 6 months and it's not working. Like I think a lot of what we try to do is bring that methodology to be able to tell what's working and what isn't, right? Mm-hmm. So if you know that it is ultimately the revenue needs to come, and those closed loop analytics need to be there to be able to tell what's working, the guidance is that you need to be able to give it time. And so that can be challenging, especially to your point, Chris, if you're going after multiple industries or multiple personas where you might be firing multiple products, you might be firing on dozens of cylinders, when you're at scale, and each of them require their own, to some degree, their own level of test and learning within each of those groups. So then what is lead generation? Like, if punting a lead over, or even you were just doing a legacy marketing campaign to drive awareness and getting the phones to ring, I feel like lead generation as a word is almost changing. The definition of it is changing.
Yeah, you want to take a stab at trying to redefine?
Yeah. So when we talk to sort of a traditional organization, like let's talk about sort of like the leader adopters to marketing automation solutions, for example, where it's been basically a sales-led, totally sales-led relationship, in quotations, relationship-based, solution. Sometimes price-based, but relationship-based, if you will. They are driving relationships and revenue through, one-on-one conversations. And then you've got this changing demographic out there that's expecting to be able to learn and understand what's going on in your industry and in your business without actually talking to you. So you need to find a way to, sort of bring them into that conversation so you can have that one-on-one. So that's lead generation to me, is generating that one-on-one conversation.
It's the identification of individuals willing to have that conversation.
I think so. I mean, that's when I think about it. And, we're in a business where it's not like a one and done. We're not selling windows and doors. We're selling like a service that is an ongoing
Relationship.
company and enhancing type of solution. So it is a relationship type thing that is it's not going to be likely like a two conversation kind of a deal. It's going to be one where, we need to we'd have several conversations and, get to know each other and understand what.
But I think even if it is, closer to a one and done, or a few steps, or a few conversations to sort of reach a close. So maybe the value of the, I think that's also relative, because the size of the company, they could perceive our really large company might look at our services and say, oh, that's nothing, right? Smaller company will look at our services and say, whoa, that's, we can't afford that. but I think let's just say it's a widget or a window and door. I think you still have, lead generation as it's changing. It's, we're not just sort of like generating a phone call. Like I think we were talking earlier about, well, it's got to be the right phone call. So now you're into a little bit of a different mix on these digital channels to say, well, yeah, but how do we do that? How do we get at someone that might be, yeah, sure, if you're just shopping for something straight up, replace my windows in GTA or in Burlington. Okay, you better be there. But when we're looking at the broader, we always know 90% of an audience is probably, like your windows might actually need to be replaced. You're not shopping for them. You're looking at people that have 10, 15-year-old houses. We can get in front of them. That's also lead generation. So how do you then now tell that story the way a salesperson could if they showed up at your door? Well, by the way, you've got spots on a few of your windows up here, and I can tell right now that, did you know you could get 30 or 40% more efficiency? So I feel like it's changed.
Wasn't it about the sort of the nature of the conversation, as in, we used to think of like the straight sale, like you need a new window, as opposed to saying, well, the best way to have the conversation is, what is the benefit that we can deliver to that that potential customer? So understanding the right questions or the right observations, which and then transferring them into the digital space. So like your example saying, your house is 15 years old, and there's been a lot of snow this winter, so there might be damage in your windows. Have you checked? So this kind of a thing that might generate somebody who might not think that they need to replace their windows. Oh, I better check my windows. I hadn't even thought about that. So it's this whole strategic thing that comes before that conversation that's going to uncover those potential leads that might not be apparent. They might not be on that initial list of, everybody needs to replace their windows.
But I think the bridge between what you're both saying is, I think it's twofold. It's one, technology and digital marketing's changed a lot, where you can actually get that specific now, thanks to targeting tools and whatever else. But I think the other thing is, to me, the differentiation between demand gen and lead gen is demand gen, you pick your list, you do research, and theoretically everyone on that list is you sort of right in your wheelhouse, your target. But with lead gen, you don't really control that. You can zero in and target on a region or a specific thing, but you still have to have, to your point, Robin, like disciplined qualification and an ability for someone on that end of the phone call to control how you communicate the value prop. And then from there, suss out what the needs actually are to be able to create a solution that's meaningful to that prospect, so that they would continue the call, continue the engagement, and see out a potential solution.
But the lead gen is about someone putting their hand up, no? Like, I mean, I get it that we want to make sure that the right people put their hand up. But
well, I thought I'm saying you can't control the quality of the lead to a degree.
Right.
And that's why qualification and the ability to maneuver in that first conversation is so critical. And that's the separation between
the lead
being able to take advantage of a good lead versus just letting it go when it was a bad lead and wasn't going anywhere.
And understanding why, and maybe I'm sort of jumping the gun a little bit, but I think of some of the debriefs that we do at the end of a sales cycle, and understanding what worked and what didn't, because that's incredibly valuable to go ahead and refine what your lead gen strategy is. Every process you go through, whether you win the deal or not, you learn something.
And I think that's what we were, going to the next step was really, okay, so how do you map out a successful strategy? We kind of jumped ahead into that, what you were saying around strategy number one. But I think unpacking that sales process, I think if you're a sales-driven organization, you're actually doing lead generation right now. You're likely going through a process where, whether you know it or not, or it's really formalized down to steps, or you're just been thrown into the fire to go figure it out, you're building your own pipeline.
Some kind of prospecting. Yeah.
Prospecting, you're going out and you're reaching out, and you're just, so I think that's really important on the digital side to sort of bring that back. And so let's talk about that, Chris. What are the conversations that you have? What's that first? And how do you yourself view a prospect and know what would be good or bad, or likely good or bad? To your point, you don't really know. And then bring that into your lead generation as a digital team to simulate that front end that upfront end of the pipeline build.
Yeah, I think simulation is a good word to use, because what you're trying to do is to find and define that process all the way from where are you going to be at the end. So we talk about the helping our customers sort of establish where that that outcome is going to be. What is that outcome going to be? Well, if we're talking about sort of bringing on a new account in a particular vertical or whatever, we understand enough about that business to understand what those what those pain points or what those difficulties might mean, and then our sales process is all about making sure that the full pain is fully articulated. How much pain is being felt by not having a solution for this particular problem. So if we're trying to sell a customer on the value of a digital marketing solution for lead gen, we need to understand the how painful it is for them to have such poor leads now, or to have such no leads now.
Sure.
And so that's to me it's like understanding where it is that we need to not accentuate, but basically make sure that the understanding of the hurt that is being felt is fully expressed.
Sure.
I also think it's the discipline to stay on a structured, these are the 5 or 7 things that we need to get from an information perspective. It's the discipline to stay on that rigor, to ask those questions and not just get sucked into a free-flowing conversation, because it could always go a different direction, but it's always coming back to, okay, but these are the things that I need to find out. And the salesperson cleverly finding a way to do that without breaking the flow of the call.
Yeah, and I think it would be nice to be able to say, well, there's one keyword that, or there's one ad that we would run that would cast such a massive net that we're, it's just worth it to run that one thing. I think what we are seeing is that it's not going to happen, right? What we're seeing is that breaking down those client types and pain points, to your point, Chris, and value points, to your point, Robin. Well, what is important to those different, customer groups? Someone that is searching, if we go back to that window example, for windows that are maybe price oriented or high value or eco. And then on the demand gen piece that you were saying, where you're proactively going out to a base and pushing messages in front of them, what information do you already know about those accounts? If you know that they've got poor, if their website is not up to snuff, and that's why you're prospecting them, then there's a whole stream of messaging that's unique to that group, right? So on a digital marketing basis now, I mean, that can create a massive amount of work, because all of a sudden you're having to run several personas, several campaigns, different messaging, all of which might perform 5 or 6 or a dozen leads each, but aggregated together, it's hundreds of leads a week or whatever,
and
right?
I think though, like even, I think we probably all agree, as an agency, we would probably say this, but I think that's kind of the new standard of operations. It's not even like do that and you're going to see superior results. I think we're at a place now where buyers are sophisticated, and whether it's deliberate or not, they're moving towards things that resonate with them. So you can't, as a marketer, afford to be so broad brushed in how you approach it, because it won't even work to get industry standard results.
So you have to go targeted, but you also have to go wide across multiple messages.
Right.
And I think that goes it goes to the process, because if you're not following that process, it's going to be very easy to kind of go in one direction, and then you're missing the rest of the opportunity.
That's right.
So you have to stick with the process that you believe in. You can always change or modify, but that's going to ensure that you cover all those bases and you do go through all those different messages, all those different personas, and don't miss those.
The difference would be if you had, let's say the pain point was, let's just go back to the website example. So maybe your website isn't mobile optimized, right? So now you're going out and you're running ads. Well, if you saw an ad that was highly general on a, benefits of a mobile optimized site are great, and you're managing to get in front of an audience here, or you say you chop that same ad down into 10 different verticals and you say, well, that's going to show up in front of medical offices, and now there's only 2,000 that are going to show up in front of it's the same value prop potentially, but it's framed in a lens that meets
It resonates.
right?
They can
Why
see.
wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of the new standard I think we're now operating
yes,
under.
exactly.
So I think we wanted to cover that. I don't know, what are we at, Alex, in terms of timing?
19 minutes.
19. So that was pretty good. Point here is that it's all about sales, Chris.
It's all about identifying your target and making sure that the message is super clear,
But
super
also
on point.
And closing.
Also, just really identifying what the journey looks like from prospecting to buy, and who on team revenue is accountable for what part of that. And it's we always talk about sales and marketing alignment, and rightfully so. But it's the assigning of responsibility to ensure each stage of the journey is checked, and values being delivered at each of those stages to move one forward from a prospect forward from stage 1 to 2 to 3 and so on.
Yeah, being so revenue focused, I know that can put pressure on practitioners or people in roles, because you're the marketers on the ground or part of that just general team revenue that you were describing. I mean, now there's a level of stress and pressure that sort of exists, but I think it's, at the end of the day, there's probably too much going on right now in sort of the digital marketing and creative space that is way on the other end of the spectrum, where there's almost no recognition of revenue. There's a lot of agencies that would, hey, it's probably great to work for a company like Under Armour or Microsoft or any of these guys, but they have such huge brands that, you're probably not you probably can't really screw those campaigns up too badly, right? Because, Microsoft's a known brand.
Yeah, but you think of the pressure on revenue when you're that big, like moving the needle just slightly.
Exactly.
It's even more
But marketing
challenging.
might not feel that because
And
they've
they
got
don't.
like a sales arm. But I think we're
sales
saying
would.
the new realities of the marketers. I think they're maybe in some cases for the first time they're starting to feel some of that pressure.
Yeah.
They're not used to it. They're kind of sweating a bit, saying, "What is this thing?" And I think deep down it's probably always existed, because hey, if you're not adding value, someone's going to
I
recognize
think
it.
especially for the types of clients that we tend to deal with that are in the earlier stages, to your point, Chris, about in their journey, likely, like we don't see a lot of companies that come to us and say, hey, we've been running digital programs for 3 to 5 years. We've been getting an 8 to 10% on this and a 12 to 15 on that. And we're really looking to sort of amp this to like level 2. We're seeing people that are, hey, we tried to dip a toe, we pulled back, but now we're ready to get strategic, and we've applied a budget to it. So there's a whole lot of that learning that's going to start to go on. Absolutely. Where you want to have pressure and awareness of revenue, and this is part of what we're doing, but you also want to have enough breathing room that you can allow a program to come into play and evolve, right? Where you're not under the gun so heavily where, we just spent our first $150,000 on media and we're panicking, right? Like, you're going to need to be able to, and that goes to our test and learn framework and just generally speaking, having enough data to understand what you're doing, right?
Absolutely.
I think there's more empirical acceptance of the
Empirical acceptance.
Yeah, of the
big
fact
words
that
for a
it
Friday
actually
afternoon.
works. That it works. I
Yes.
guess so.
Yeah, of
So
course
it actually
there is. Yeah.
works. And so as much as there is panic, because I mean we always have that ROI conversation. Like when we're talking to the people that are just getting into it, or maybe they've dipped a toe, as Mike said. Now they're sort of wanting to get strategic. In the early part of it, they're all excited and so forth. When it comes down to actually getting it signed up, so what about the ROI on this? Because that always sneaks back in, right?
What I don't like about, it's not your comment, but that take is we always look at the end goal. But when you say it works, we should be looking at it from like more of an attribution perspective as to what was the goal. In marketing's case, a lot of time it's earlier on in the sales cycle. So it working doesn't necessarily have to convert or translate into the sale, but it did its job to get the prospect from stage 1 to stage 2. And that's what I mean by attribution. Not just saying,
goals.
did this one thing result in the sale? I mean, like...
No. I'm saying going back to the original question, which is what is lead gen? Lead gen is when that hand goes up and that conversation is started of like with a prospect that is the right prospect. Like I can't guarantee that each and every time everything's going to fall in place and they're going to, we're going to be closing them. But a lead, a lead is a lead when that conversation gets started. What I'm saying about what works is that what doesn't work anymore are those things that did work 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Those don't work.
Sure.
So now I'm saying in the context of like looking at what was going on back in the early 2000s versus what's going on now, is there room for conversations? Is there room for phone calls and cold calls? For sure, but it's not your 100% of your strategy
But
anymore.
I do think it's part of what you're saying is that, if you're going to carve off $500,000 or $1 million to move into digital strategically, if you're somewhat of a larger sales organization, you've got that, and you already know, well, okay, if it's $500,000, I know that's X number of head count and my commission, and you figured all that out, and you've got a reasonably good sense of dials per day and what that kind of probably translates to. There's probably a lot of challenges running that sales organization today. You're probably having a series of, the types of things that you're talking about in terms of getting people on the phone and the staff, the staffing around it. So you're looking at digital saying, well, if there's a huge portion of the front end of this thing that we can chop off through this process, I still need to understand how that $500,000 that I could deploy through, X number of people will eventually turn into a contribution to the whole bigger picture, right? And I think those are the conversations that we do like to have, and I think not enough agencies maybe are really kind of thinking that way because they're just sort of so focused, so fixated on putting an ad in and getting it in front of somebody, and it's like, okay, but how is that mapping back to the big sales strategy, right?
Right. So, and it's the level of your different benchmarks and KPIs as you go through those steps, and then having goals along each one, right? So your goal is not, your single goal is not just to drive X% return on investment, right? You're going to have stages along the way, and those are going to be signs of success, right?
All right,
But ultimately, it's all about sales.
ABC.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
So all KPIs are fine, Robin, but
it's about revenue, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome, Chris.
We'll have a chat in the hall, Chris.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to see some revenue, okay? As soon as possible. So hopefully there's some money.
I want my leads.
You want
Get
your
some
leads.
leads.
No.
Kev, leads.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks. This has been good.
Revenue.
Yeah, this has been good. Thank you. Alex, I love the new setup. We love the new setup. Okay. Peace.
Cheers, everyone.